Okay, so good morning to everyone. This is the second lecture on relaxation function, as just discussed. And I should thank him for the lecture yesterday because he introduced some of the concepts that I will now detail and be able to go straight away in the machinery behind the relaxation function that we presented yesterday. So, I go directly to this second part of the talk. I remind that yesterday we had a look to the static polarization function, that is to say the polarization function which is measured when the field at the neuron is independent of time. We started from a distribution approach, assuming some form for the distribution, and then in the second step, this was the discussion here, we first get the origin of the field at the neuron side, the nature of this field, and computed the field distribution in the case of magnets, ordered magnets, in the case where the magnetic moments are uncorrelated. Now it's time to go to the dynamical polarization function. And here we are. So, the Larmor equation, of course, still holds. I will call it here. And now, the local field at the muon side is time dependent. And to get the solution of this Larmor equation is much more difficult than when the local field is static. And even in our case, the local field is a stochastic variable. It's even more difficult. So, to account for this stochastic character, we'll use two different models. And there is a common hypothesis for these two models, which is the following. The local field follows the stationary Gaussian-Markovian process. So what does it mean? In a stochastic process, a random variable takes a value which evolves with time. And this value belongs to a set of possible values of which we can construct the distribution. Here we have a stationary process. It means that it's independent of the origin of time. We have a Gaussian process, which means that the random variable belongs to a Gaussian distribution. And we have a Markovian process, which means that the stochastic variable evolves in jumps with a hopping probability which doesn't depend on the system state before the jump. So this is a very important assumption. And in this case, there is an important term that we use in the next slides, which is Doob's theorem, which states that the correlation function of this of such a random variable, which was this kind of process, can be separated in a product, as it's written here, where we have here the second moment of the random variable multiplied by the time dependence, which is an exponential term, where mu c, or the inverse of mu c, is a field correlation term. So with this at hand, we will compute this polarization function for the two models that we will consider. The first one will be the so-called wheel collision model. And for this, I will take the example of the transverse polarization function, Px of t, and in the case where there is a single static field at the neuron. In this case, I remind you yesterday's lecture that the function is very easy, polarization function is easy to see, it's a single cosine function. Now the field we consider here, because we are in the high-contrast field approximation, only the z component of the field, we consider that it's time dependent. And here we express the angle of precession of the muon spin, assuming that the field takes this value at time t0, and assuming that between time t0 and time t1, it keeps this value. Then the total precession angle is given by this product. And so on. For instance, if at Tn minus 1, the local field has got this value, the precession angle between Tn1 and Tn is equal to this point. So we can go to a continuous model, and this is the object of this weak collision model, so that the total precession angle is given by this integral. Precession angle between 0 and T is given by this. So it's of interest to consider the polarization function as an imaginary exponential. It makes the task easier. And therefore it's written like this, where the average stands over all the possible field configuration. And at the end, to get the polarization function, we simply take the real part. Now, there is an important result that I show without justification, which is the following. The average of the terms that I've shown before, which is not exactly the same. Here it was BZ log, now it's delta BZ log, which is the deviation from the average value of the field. So this average value can be written with this expression, where there is a correlation function of the fluctuation part of the field, which is at play. We use Dooks theorem that I showed before, and this equality we shows for any well-behaved function, provided that it's an even function of time. And this is the case for the correlation function we're considering. And after little computation, we get this expression, where again, as we saw yesterday, we are in the Height-Andersfield approximation. You have the product of oscillating term and the damping term. And this damping factor, let's say, takes this form, where delta G is the second moment of the field deviation. And this is the so-called Abraham formula, which was actually derived by Henderson in 1954. So it's very ubiquitous in the MUSR experiment, at least in the Andersfield MUSR experiment. And this was due to Henderson. Here's a picture of Henderson. And I should say that Henderson is one of the most influential physicists in condensed matter physics for the second half of the 20th century. And quite amazingly, if you look through the archive preprint database, you could find still a preprint from him on last year. And he's the only author of the preprint. So he's still active, he's now 95 or something. So we proceed, and we examine this Abraham polarization function in two limiting cases. First case is when the field distribution is quasi-static. But in UC is much less than the field width, which is randomized by the non-geometric ratio. And here we take an expansion of the exponential term at the second order in time to get a Gaussian or expression as we can. And this is plotted here as a blue line. In the case of fast dynamics, these two terms in the sum here are negligible compared to this one, and we get an exponential relaxation function, whereas the exponential rate is this fraction that we have seen yesterday in many instances. And as you can see, it's a combination of both the field width and the fluctuation rate. And this is so-called extreme motion narrowing limit, which is the wording borrowed to NMR. Now we switch to the second model, which is the so-called strong collision model. And here we consider the longitudinal field polarization function. And this model assumes that the field briskly changes at given times. And in this case, we write the polarization function as a sum of contribution to this polarization function. And each contribution is the one when we consider that the muon have experienced L field change between 0 and t. And L goes to 0, no field change between 0 and t to infinity. So the R0 term is easy to compute. If there's no field change between 0 and t, it means that we have got static polarization function, as written here. And we have to multiply it to get the contribution by the probability of having no field change between 0 and t, which is exponential minus mu ct. Now let's examine the case where there is one field change between 0 and t. So we recast the previous expression. We assume, we name the time at which the field change takes place as t prime. So the evolution of the muon polarization from 0 to t prime is given by this product, which is very reminiscent of what we have here. And this is obtained for configuration I of the field. Now, field changes at t prime, and we, as Tom explained yesterday, we reset the system, if you like, and we have here the evolution of the polarization between t prime and t. It is the same formula, time shifted by t prime. And we have the hopping rate, which must be included. So now, this average is over all the possible I and j configuration. I is here, j is on the left. Because it's a Markovian process, there is no correlation, there is no, all the value possible for j are completely independent to the values which were taken for I. Therefore, the average of the product is the product of the average. So we can take the average of this part according to all the I possibility, and the average for this part according to all the j possibility. And we are back to the previous formula, where we have an average also, and this is the results that we have. So we have a relation between R1 and R0. We can proceed, and for any number L, we compute in the very same way the recursion formula, recursion relation between RL plus 1 and RL. The number, the case where there are L plus 1 field change between 0 and t, it's related to the function when there are L field change between 0 and t. Now, take the sum of this, both of these terms on the left-hand side and right-hand side of the derivative for L equals 0 to plus infinity. You get this line, which is quite straight away. You sum over, so you sum, and if you sum over RL, you have by definition a PZ of t minus 2. And this sum here, because it starts at R1, it's this PZ minus R0. So here is the first line is just the last line here, relation with the definition of R0, which is this expression. So now it's of interest, it's useful to consider the Laplace transform of this equality. Because here you have already the solution. PZ of t is expressed, but it's expressed as an integral equation. PZ appears under an integral. And PZ appears here and here, so it's quite tricky to solve. That is possible, we'll see. And taking the Laplace Fourier transform this integral equation includes this simple equation. The Laplace transform of the polarization function is expressed as the Laplace transform of the static function. So it's very convenient. And this will help us to derive the expression of Pz of t in the case of in limiting case when the dynamics is slow, when it's fast, and so on. For numerical transpose, the integral equation can be solved numerically, and this is what I personally use. I find it very efficient, and it avoids the drawback of the issues with inversing the Laplace transform. So we see now the results when we consider isotopic Gaussian distribution. So the static function is the Kubo-Tollé function that we have seen already many times. And here it's plotted as a function of mu c in unit of delta g. At 0 here, you recognize the Kubo-Tollé polarization function. And when mu c is increasing, you have this evolution. So at beginning, it's the tail which decays, and then it becomes exponential, as we will see now using the Laplace transform and analytical results. The first case is slope dynamics, quasi-static dynamics. In this case, only the one subterm is affected by dynamics, whereas the two subterm, the right-hand side, remains unchanged compared to the static function. And interestingly, the decay rate of the one subterm depends only on mu c and not on delta g. And this is this part here that you see, the decay term, one sub decay. Now the second case I want to consider is the case of intermediate dynamics, the case where mu c is slightly larger or same order of magnitude as dynamic delta g. In this case, we analytically get this expression, is given here. And if you look carefully at this expression, it's reminiscent of the Abraham function. The difference is the factor 2, which comes in front of it, which can be explained by the fact that there are two components which depolarize the muon, whether in high transverse field there was only one. Now, in the fast fluctuation limit, when mu c is very large, we can take as before the expansion of this formula, or more precisely, we neglect this term to get an exponential bending right, where lambda t is equal to this probably delta g squared divided by. This is also the extreme motion array. We continue with this function with the polarization function, longitudinal field polarization function. When the longitudinal field is applied, it's plotted here. In the case where the external field is equal to 3 times the field width, just a choice like that. It could be, we can compute for any value of the field that you like. And the Laplace transform that I showed earlier allows us to compute analytically the polarization function. It's again an exponential in the case of fast fluctuation limit. And the relaxation rate is given by this expression. And it depends on the external field, omega mu here, which is proportional to the external field, in a Lorentzian, as a Lorentzian function. So I said that in zero field, lambda z is the product of delta g squared divided by mu c, so that's its combination of the both parameters. If you do only zero field experiment, you can separate the contribution of delta g and mu c, and this, by doing field dependence, you can separate those, you can determine those parameters and you get. And here, this is, for instance, the dependence, this is the Lorentzian dependence of the relaxation rate of the function of the field. And to get new C value, you just look at the position, at the field value for which the relaxation rate has dropped by factor 1/2, and you get an expression for new C. You get a value for new C. Now, the case of where magnetic moments are diluted into a matrix of non-magnetic atoms. I talked about it yesterday. I showed that in transverse field, the component field distribution is a Lorentzian, and in zero field, the vectorial field distribution is a square Lorentzian. And you have to imagine to see what is happening in such a system. You have muons amongst all the muons which are included, which sit close to magnetic atoms. This muon will experience large field. I recall that we are mainly dealing with the dipole interaction, which decays very fast with the distance. So if you are close to a magnetic moment, you have a strong field. Now, the majority of the magnetic moments are far away from any magnetic site. And therefore, they experience very small field compared to the first group. So the first muon that I consider will explore this part of the distribution, large field, and the latter muons will only experience this one. And when a field change occurs, a muon which is far away from any magnetic moment, which is somewhere here in the distribution, has no chance to explore this part of the distribution. Therefore, the Markovian hypothesis, Markovian process hypothesis, breaks. And we cannot apply directly what I said so far. So there is a trick to proceed that I will explain now. We will compute the dynamic polarization function for those muons who are, for instance, close to a magnetic moment, and for separately for those muons who are far away from any magnetic moment. And only at the end, we perform the special average. So, this is here the expression of the static polarization function in the case of a dilute magnetic system. I didn't show it so far. It's a form very similar to the Kubo-Telleré form, 1/3 term, 2/3 term. The difference is in this factor here and here, where yesterday for the Gaussian distribution we have t squared, delta squared, and here. So the trick is to write this function here as an integral of Kubo-Telleré function. Kubo-Telleré function, we know how to treat and to obtain the dynamical function associated to it. That's what we just seen. And we average over some distribution of the Kubo-Telleré field width. And it turns out that this function here is the right function to get the equality. And this function is plotted here. And now to compute the dynamical polarization function of the case of a system with dilute magnetic moment, we use this equality, which is exactly the same as this one, except that we have now the dynamical function, which is expressed in terms of the same integral as above of the dynamical Kubo-Telleré function. And that's the trick. Again, we can examine the limiting cases. So, sorry, first, this is the result which are plotted here. This is with 0, this is the static function for diluted system with diluted magnetic moment. And when the new C increases, as before, you have the 1/3 tail which relaxes and progressively it becomes exponential. And what I should say also is that, if you remember well, I should have said that, there is something which is a little bit strange, which should be noticed. Here, if you look at the relaxation rate, when mu C increases, the relaxation rate increases as mu c. And in this regime, it decreases. So there's a change of regime. And it's the same. Go back now to this Lorentzian function. It's the same signature. So the Laplace transform helps us to examine the limiting cases. In case of quasi-static dynamics, again, you have only a decay of the one-third term. This is the same as we saw before. In the case of intermediate dynamics, we have an analytical expression for the relaxation function. And in the case of strong dynamics, the function is an exponential of the square root of phi. We'll come back to this at the end of the lecture. Now, we'll talk a little bit about the quantum approach. We learned from Steve yesterday that it has to be also considered. You can learn from it. And before I would like to remind you this thing when you have longitudinal field experiment. You can consider the muon, which is a spin 1/2 muon, spin 1/2, right, as a two-level system, as you can see here. And because the beam is polarized, only one at time 0, only one of this level is populated, the other one is completely depleted. The splitting between the two levels is equal to h bar omega mu, where omega mu equals gamma mu, the external field, and it's got a small value, which is much less than the thermal energy. Therefore, at thermal equilibrium, the two states are necessarily equipopulated. To fix the idea for local field of 1 Tesla, which is quite a strong field already, it's rarely obtained. The splitting is less than a micro electron volt, which corresponds in terms of temperature to 6 millikelvin, so temperature much below the temperature of our experiment. So we can proceed using this picture and compute probability of transition from one level to the other one, so I showed you yesterday, to compute the relaxation rate. Another way to do is to start directly from the quantum approach, and we use the definition, the expression that was introduced yesterday and the day before by Steve, using the density matrix, density operator. And here it's slightly different to what he showed, because I'm using the spin operator rather than the power matrix. That is fully equivalent. So to compute the time evolution of S mu z, we use the Heisenberg representation, which is written here, the function of the Hamiltonian of the muon system and so on. And if you do that, you find after some computation that the relaxation function is approximately an exponential function of the function phi z of t. Phi z is written with this relatively complicated formula that I will detail. There is first a factor t minus tau, the usual cosine omega mu tau, and the field correlation function, more precisely the x and y component of the field of which we take the correlation function. And here I have written in terms of a symmetrized correlation function. In most cases, time reversal symmetry holds, and these two terms are equal. Nevertheless, it's more general to write this incorrect form of this equation. Now there is an approximation which often holds, which is to consider that this field correlation function decays at a rate in a time much shorter than the time t to which we need to compute the polarization function. In this case, tau can be negative compared to t, and therefore goes out of the integral, which is over tau. And the upper bound of the integral here can be set to infinity, since the function to integrate has already vanished. And this way, we get a simple form for this relation. Since t is proportional to the rest of the integral, we have what is written down above here, exponential relaxation with a damping rate, a relaxation rate equal to this term, which is, actually I should have said it, this is now the cosine Fourier transform of the field correlation function, which is closely related to the Fourier transform, especially because the field correlations are even function of the time. So now we can get the expression of lambda z, the function of parameter, and we assume, as we did for the Dulles theorem, this form for the field correlation function, the second moment of the field distribution times the exponential term, exponential minus ct. And we get this relation, this equality that we already see from the strong collision model. We get this Lorentzian invariance, the so-called Redfield formula. So this form, this Lorentzian forms for the field invariance of the relaxation rate, follows simply for the exponential damping of the field correlation function. We'll tell a little bit more about now about the expression of the relaxation rate in terms of spin correlation function. So it will be rather easy after what I explained yesterday. We remember that the field at the neutron site is the sum of the dipole field and the Fermi contact field. I do not insist too much. It's exactly the same size that you've seen yesterday. Because both of fields depend linearly on J, and both of them, we can express it in this compact form, which is here. And we also take the space Fourier transform as before. We have already taken the time Fourier transform, and we arrive at this simple expression, compact expression at least, for the relaxation rate, which is an integral over the Q vector of the Brillouin zone of a product of two factors. First factor is the spin correlation function. Again, it's symmetrized, but in many cases, both terms are equal. And the second factor here results only from the muon system coupling factor, is expressed in terms of the G tensor. So here is a summary of this result. And you must remember that the spin correlation function is taken very near zero energy. The energy range is in nano or micro electron volt, even less than micro electron volt. And it's much less than the usual units that the usual values that you have in condensed matter, which are at usual temperature. It's more in the milli-electron volt range. The coupling between the spin and the magnets are also in the milli-electron volt. So you have a picture at very small energy. And the integral is done with this, which can be considered as a weighting factor. And you find very similar formula for the field of NF. You express T1 spin lattice relaxation time with very similar formula. Now, I already finished, and there are two small parts that I would like to mention. First one is to study what's going on when correlations are present in the distribution and when correlations are absent. So I will start with the first one, which is the easiest one. And I go back to the distribution story of yesterday. I consider now that we have a Young ensemble which is submitted to a superposition of field distributions. And to proceed to find what will be the result, we take this general result for the statistics, that is distribution resulting from independent distribution is simply the convolution product of each of the distribution. So we can apply this in the case of I transverse field, and the result is quite trivial because we have seen that the envelope for the polarization function is the inverse Fourier transform of the field distribution. The field, I recall that the field distribution of the Fourier transform of the convolution product is a product of the Fourier transform. Therefore, it's simple. And here I take the example of a muon implanted in a system with dilute magnetic moment inside the matrix which contains nuclear moment. The polarization function is therefore given by the product of the response due to the nuclear moment, the exponent shows the Gaussian form, times the response of system due to the electronic moment, diluted electronic moment, which is this exponential decay. Now, let's consider the case of zero field function. When the distributions, the contributing distribution are Gaussian, this is easy because the convolution of Gaussian is also a Gaussian function. If one of the distribution is not Gaussian, it's trickier because the static polarization function is not expressed as an inverse Fourier transform. So we cannot get a general formula as we did before, and we have to examine every case. For those who are aware, we know about the so-called Kubo-Golden formula, which was established which was proposed by Kubo to solve this kind of issue. I must say that you should be cautious when using it because we have recently found a case where it breaks. It's not applicable. So now, in many instances, when you study magnetic system, quasi-static magnetic system, you observe relaxation which is not too far from a Kubo-Taylor relaxation. You have the Gaussian damping and ring, you have the tail, one-third tail at large time. The only difference is that the dip here is not so large as in the Kubo-Taylor function. And it was proposed to understand this kind of structure, the following function. It was proposed that this resulted from the average of Kubo-Taylor function, where the exponential, the Gaussian width of the field distribution is itself distributed according to a Gaussian function centered on beta naught and with the width beta GBG. GBG stands for Gaussian, Borden Gaussian function. So this explains the name. And if you plot the result of this integral as a function of the ratio of beta GBG divided by beta naught, get this type of function. Here, at early time, it's same more or less as the Kubo-Taylor. At large time, it's also 1/3, and as you see, the dip is progressively suppressed as the ratio is obtained. And for those who were at the workshop yesterday, there is one exercise that you have on your USB key, which is to compute this polarization function according, using your preferred analysis package. Now, another approach, which is the kind of spectrum where the dip is not so large as predicted by Kubo-Taylor, was proposed by David Knox, about 20 years ago from Monte Carlo simulation. And this result suggested that the presence of short-range correlation should be responsible of the dip, which is the weak dip, not so profound as in the Kulo-Derivé function. So the fact that we have something which looks like a Kulo-Derivé function suggests that we are not far away from a Gaussian function, and therefore we can look for distribution which is close but different from the Gaussian function. And this is what we did here by replacing this Gaussian shape by a little bit expanded form of the argument of the exponential, taking the third power of the field and the fourth power of the field, as you can see from this expression. And we applied it to a highly frustrated magnet, for which we have this kind of polarization function, looking the Kulo-Derivé dynamical because the one certain is decay, but with no dip. The dashed line, the dotted line here is the Kulo-Derivé condition. And this provides a good fit to the data, and the distribution which is obtained is the one with the full line, which compares with the Gaussian distribution. It's not Gaussian distribution. And the idea behind this is the central limit theorem. Central limit theorem states that a combination of many distribution as a limit, which is the Gaussian distribution, whatever the shape of the individual distribution. And this is so provided that there is no correlation between the distribution, the component distribution. Here we have a non-Gaussian shape for the field, for the horizon field, for the total field distribution of the muon. So this means that the independence hypothesis doesn't hold, therefore we have correlation. Last part of the talk is the stretch exponential function. This is a thing which is often seen in literature, in USR papers. You will often see results which spectral which are analyzed in terms of this function. And of course, I should say something about it, since this talk is dedicated to relaxation function. So the stretch exponential function is given by this expression, where beta is a stretch exponent. It's comprised between 0 and 1. And sometimes in some paper you even see authors which consider beta larger than 1, up to 2 for instance, to include the Gaussian distribution. And when beta is more than 1, this is a compressed exponential function rather than a stretch exponential. So this shape was introduced a long time ago to interpret the decay of the charge of the early version of the condensator in electricity. And it can be understood as resulting from a collection of exponential function, exponential minus lambda t, with the appropriate distribution of relaxation rates. For instance, so it can be written this way. Exponential minus lambda t, where we have written s per lambda divided by lambda. And this is the expression, this is the form of the probability distribution of the relaxation rate as a function of the beta exponent. So in the case where you have exponential, it's a Dirac function, there is only a single relaxation rate which takes place. So in the case of μSR, so far I've not talked about this function. And there is actually only one case, if you remember well, where we have seen this function. This was this expression that we saw earlier today, exponential square root of t, which was valid in the case of fast dynamics, extremely fast dynamics, in the case of dilute spin glasses or dilute magnetic impurity in non-magnetic matrix. This is the only case in which my knowledge is existing. Now, I would like to provide an example, again taken from a geometrically frustrated magnet, where you can find well-motivated polarization function which mimics perfectly the stretch exponential function. So here is the next example of a spectrum taken from this system in the parametric phase. 2 Kelvin, whereas the other phase is transition is slightly below 1 Kelvin. And the best fit is obtained to a stretch exponential with an exponent 0.7. And it compares with the exponential, which is a dotted line, which doesn't fit very well this part, this work, especially, and even at such a short time where it's not very visible here. And we found that actually the dynamical Cubo-Toye model, the standard model that I've shown before, fits very well the data. These are here the same data, except that they are shown here as a function of the regard of time rather than the usual linear scale. And you see that we obtain a very good fit, and this is shown here. And the validity of the model is ascertained by the field difference, which is shown here. You have many different fields, and you see some kind of big wiggles here. And all this set of data is analyzed with the same value for the field width and the correlation time. So it's quite a strong validation of the. So I think I've finished with this, and I'll summarize the talk. So we talked yesterday was essentially the static polarization function, computing the field distribution in physical cases. And today it was related to the dynamical function, and also talked about the effect of spatial connection. Thank you very much.
We're running a little bit short of time, but does anyone have questions, mostly on clarification, and we can more of a discussion during coffee?
Yeah, in some of your formulas, you have a V underscore C and an N underscore C, but you never defined what those were.
I defined its correlation time for its.
No, not mu. It's not. It doesn't look like a mu. It looks like a V.
It's a sorry. It's a volume of the unit itself.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're right.
Any last questions? Okay, well let's thank Pierre again. Thank you very much.